You know, when you look back at late 1939 and 1940, it's easy to see why the world was just an absolute shock. Hitler's war machine, it looked completely unstoppable. In just over a year, Germany had taken over this huge part of Europe, and it really seemed like Britain was the only one left standing against this invincible German juggernaut.
I mean, think about it. Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, just one after another, they fell to the terrifying speed and power of the German military. On the surface, this looked like Hitler's absolute crowning achievement.
Okay, but here's the twist. What if I told you that hiding just beneath the surface of these stunning victories, Germany was making some catastrophic errors? That the very triumphs that built this myth of invincibility were actually planting the seeds of its final defeat? Let's dig into how these amazing successes were, in reality, fatal missteps.
Right, so to really get the myths, we first have to understand the myth. Back in 1940, the world was just completely floored. Nobody had ever seen a military move with this kind of speed and, well, brutal efficiency before. I mean, the pace was just breathtaking. Poland gets crushed in a matter of weeks. Then, after this little pause, boom! Denmark and Norway are seized in April. And then comes the main event in May, the Low Countries and France, which, by the way, had what was considered the most powerful army in the world, were just utterly smashed. By June, Hitler is literally posing for photos in Paris. I think a captured French general said it best. "You are much too fast for us." And that just perfectly captures the psychological paralysis the Allies were feeling. They just couldn't process what was happening. It wasn't simply a military defeat. It was like their entire understanding of modern war had just broken down.
But here's the thing. These victories weren't nearly as clean as they looked. Beneath all those headlines of conquest, Germany was paying a really steep, hidden price for its success. So let's take the invasion of Norway. On paper, it was a brilliant, incredibly daring operation. Germany secured its crucial iron ore supply line from Sweden and got these valuable naval bases on the Atlantic. Looked like another flawless victory, right?
Yeah, not so much. In reality, that victory was an absolute disaster for the German Navy, the Kriegsmarine. Now, the British Royal Navy definitely took some hits, but the Germans were crippled. They lost 10 destroyers. That's half their entire force, plus several of their modern cruisers, including their flagship, the Blucher. So this victory in Norway, it effectively took the German surface fleet right off the board for the rest of the year. Any plan to launch an invasion of Great Britain, what they were calling Operation Sea Lion, was basically a logistical nightmare before it even got off the drawing board.
Now, with France defeated, Britain should have been next on the list. It was totally isolated, facing the full might of Germany. But two really key events in the summer of 1940 made sure it survived, and both of them came from German miscalculations. First up, Dunkirk. As those German panzers were racing to the English Channel, they trapped the very best of the British Army, plus hundreds of thousands of French soldiers, in this pocket with their backs right up against the sea. Annihilation looked pretty much certain.
And then, somehow, the miracle of Dunkirk happens. In this unbelievable 9-day evacuation, over 338,000 Allied soldiers were rescued. And this was only possible because of a really controversial halt order from the German High Command, which stopped the panzers just miles from the beaches. It gave the Allies this crucial window to escape. An entire army was saved. Okay, but saving the army doesn't mean much if Germany can just win control of the air and invade anyway. This set the stage for the Battle of Britain. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, they had more combat-seasoned pilots. But the RAF had two massive advantages. They were fighting over their own turf, and they had the world's first integrated air defense system, built around radar. And for weeks, the fighting was just brutal. I mean, the RAF was getting worn down. German attacks on their airfields and radar stations were taking a really heavy toll. But then, in early September, the Germans made a fatal error. Out of frustration, they switched their focus from military targets to bombing London. This shift, which became known as the Blitz, gave the battered RAF fighter command the breathing room it so desperately needed to repair, rearm, and regroup. The RAF survived. And by the middle of September, Hitler postponed the invasion of Britain indefinitely. Britain was going to remain a thorn in his side, a permanent, unsinkable aircraft carrier just off the coast of Europe. So, let's tie this all together. How did all these hidden costs and critical blunders connect? How did Germany's greatest triumphs in 1940 lead directly to its ultimate failure?
Well, every single one of those apparent victories carried a massive hidden cost. Conquering Norway crippled the navy they needed to invade Britain. The triumph in France was incomplete because the British army got away to fight another day. And the failure to beat the RAF left a permanent, undefeated enemy right on Germany's western flank.
But you see, it wasn't just about losing ships or letting an army escape. Maybe the biggest cost here was psychological. The incredible speed of these victories created this dangerous sense of invincibility. German leaders actually started to believe their own hype, and that led them to dangerously underestimate their next and biggest opponent.
Which brings us to our final question. The fall of France is always seen as the absolute high point of Hitler's power. But was it really the moment he sealed his own fate? By creating this illusion of unstoppable momentum, did it convince him he could make his biggest gamble yet? Invading the Soviet Union the very next year? A mistake from which there would be absolutely no recovery?